every vertical product today in the market, and it requires the ability to translate what you know into actual products. So in proteanTecs, basically what we want to do today is to allow those electronics, in simple words, to communicate with us during both the production and the usage in the field, and to tell us what hurts them and how they feel from like the deepest level of electronics before a failure possess like an elementary threat, I would say, to the safety of the driver.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Tech, sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Synergy Global, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, Birthright Excel, Serona Partners, and in media partnership with CTech. Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Meet Gal Carmel, Executive Vice President, General Manager Automotive, proteanTecs. Gal is an automotive entrepreneur with a proven track record of over 15 years in rapidly honing emerging technologies, markets, and opportunities, both on business and diverse R&D aspects. Before joining proteanTecs, Gal served as Chief Technology and Production Engineering of Samsung Smart Machines, building from the ground up Samsung's ADAS and AV technology, focusing on full-stack platforms for automated driving systems. Prior to that, he held key roles in some of the most innovative pillars of autonomous driving in Mobileye, acquired by Intel, a leading supplier of advanced driver assist systems, including the first production of Mono Vision Camera AEB, autonomous emergency braking, reaching 5-star Euro NCAP rating for the most advanced production programs OEMS. Gal Carmel, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
I'm great, Michael. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm really excited to talk about automotives in a really, really deep and awesome way. And in general, about you and about your life. You've had some incredible things, from being an entrepreneur yourself and working in a variety of companies, but then being R&D program manager at Mobileye and Chief Technology and Production Engineering, Samsung Smart Machines, Europe and Israel, and then transitioning to being an Executive Vice President and General Manager of the Automotives at proteanTecs. And so, Gal, crazy background. Make sense of it for me. Who are you?
Interesting question. I think that if I'm trying to translate who I am to opposed to who I was, and people start and ask me how I was as a child compared to today, I'm actually saying that pretty much the same but smaller. So I think I grew up in car and electrical engineering and electronics environment. My father is also coming from electrical engineering. And I think I was always fascinated, I think, by the depth and knowledge that you need to be able to acquire in order to build cars. So it evolves so many aspects: mechanics, physics, electronics, design. And then back then I still didn't figure out what it requires in order to actually driving those machines. My first car didn't really start, so I spent most of my time fixing it to get to the Air Force Base. I wasn't allowed to drive a motorcycle back then. Today, luckily, I drive both motorcycles, also build them, mainly disassembling because I don't have much time. I really love bikes.
But when you're talking about, fixing, what are we talking about? Because I barely know how to change a tire myself. So we're talking about like more advanced things even, right?
Yeah. So, this is a hobby, and that will later take us to the question how the future will look like if you're going to fix a bike or a car in 10 years. But today is just using a torque wrench, playing with it, and trying to be creative in what it is that you do, assembling parts, disassembling parts, and keeping in touch with the mechanics is always great.
Right. So that's you as a kid. Now, how do you explain that? What is it about your personality or about your interest? What was it that you were specifically interested in? Automotives, or was it that there was a greater, pattern to sort of the way that your brain is wired, or that the thinking that you have on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I think I'm being called very analytical. I'm coming from really engineering background, and I see myself as engineer, very value-driven, I would say. And I always loved advanced technology, but not only the technology part of technology. I love to see how technology is actually being translated to product and then deployed in the real world, which is very interesting to see things coming from idea to usage, especially by driver. I love difficult problems. And personally, I focus in things that would produce a change in the world that I would love as a person to see.
Right. So walk me through, the remaining part of the journey, and I want to reach, your current role as executive vice president of automotives. How does your career look, and sort of what are the skills that you gain personally? And later, I want to also touch on your understanding of the automotive market and where we are today and where we should be headed.
Mm-hmm. So I think I always wanted to be a pilot, but I discovered that some of the things are really better to do, I think, as a hobby. But I started my career, printing CVs and trying to get to wherever I can, saying, I'm smart, give me a chance. And I spent most of the time in startup vision and optics and object tracking, after that building chips. And I think I scaled up my vertical knowledge through the stages, from electrical to software to application to product. But if I'm putting like a real emphasis of, I think, the juncture in my career, it's, I think, Mobileye. Back then when I joined Mobileye, it was a beeping machine. So I think it was really touched my synergy point, combined my engineering bottom-up background and the top-down understanding of the product and what driver would use in scale in the market. So I was super lucky to spend with Mobileye through the two pillars of autonomous driving. The first one was the first autonomous emergency braking, the first time that the car with a mono camera actually brakes in front of pedestrians and car. Back then, it was only on premium OEM. Today, it's standard fit, and you can find it, and also going to find it in the future in every car. So that was the first really pillar of sensing of autonomous driving. Then the second one was a project called REM. It's the first time that actually car communicated with the cloud using data. So it's the first time that cars send data to the clouds, aggregate data for mapping and for localization. It's basically open a huge opportunity in the market for a data-driven approach for sensing. I think the post the IPO, I moved to Samsung. I served as the CTO of a group called Driveline, which basically the target was building semis to ADAS, building semiconductor to ADAS in the shape of full stack, especially focusing on really advanced nodes and process it in the market. And I think that was the first time that I really saw from an enterprise perspective what it requires to build a chip to the automotive market and how it looks like from an enterprise point of view. I think when we finished that project, that was my decision to move from enterprise back to startup. This is my core. this is what I love to do. I'm always focusing in automotive my entire career. And I think that was the point that I met Shai Cohen and the former Mellanox team that basically live and breathe semiconductor. They were backed up by world-leading investors with a really proven track record, like Viola, KDT, Intel Capital, and later on Porsche and VW, a part of the VW group. And they were super experienced in the data center world, and it was amazing to see how we're taking the product from data center and communication to automotive.
Okay, awesome. So Gal, you're finishing your time at Samsung. You've had quite a run at Mobileye. Where's your head at? Before you decide to go into your next journey, how do you see the automotive industry, and what really excites you in the place that you're at?
So at that point, I definitely know that what I want to continue doing is something that is around cars. I said that cars are a great thing, not only on the practical level, but what I see at the market at that stage is that they're currently going through a very interesting evolutionary process that, on the one hand, it's teaching them new language that is communicating between cars and clouds and chips. But on the other way around, they become a very dense environment of advanced electronics. Now, What happens because of that is that the reliability of the cars, the electronics inside the cars towards us as drivers and OEMs, actually decreases the age on the road. And the control of how you repair them basically moves from the private sectors to the big manufacturer. If you're going to ask them, they also lost in troubleshooting, especially in real time, finding what's going on inside the machine. You can simply compare it to a washing machine that in the past was composed from 3 parts, but today it has a full brain. And if something goes wrong, you basically look at that and say, okay, what's going on? And then I thought, what's going to be in the market with companies or cars that is fully electrified, fully electronic? Take Tesla, for example. You cannot take it to a workshop in Tel Aviv and just lift it up and say, okay, I know what's the problem. You don't have engine, you don't have gear, you don't have mechanical sensors anymore. So I think that in that point, I saw that there is a huge amount of money being spent because of the complexity of developing advanced autonomous platforms. And that drive really high production cost and a very long time to the market. And actually, after that, when it's already in the field, the warranty costs and the maintenance costs increase opposed to that. I'm looking at manufacturers that I see low controllability along the vertical manufacturing process, and then no one guarantees to us, the driver, that the electronics reliability will actually maintain its characteristics in the field when we're driving it. So that was my turning point and my passion point. At that point, looking on the next stage of making cars better.
Interesting. So you're at that intersection, and for the next opportunity that you're going to join, are you approaching it with this understanding? Are you discovering, this gap and this issue after you join it? Well, how does this thing happen?
So when I'm looking at that point, I already knew certain problems in the market, looking from both application side and both system and electronic side, and both understanding what the OEMs would like to see in the future. And at that point, I see a very interesting change in the market, going from vertical integration to more of a triangle approach, where OEMs actually starting to look into chips. It was post-corona, and we had a major crisis in chip supplying. And now OEMs would like to have better control, better involvement in the process, both in design and both building new architecture inside the car.
Right.
That basically their backward compatibility today needs to change. And I see warranty costs going dramatically and car recalls goes dramatically. So that was the point. We saw the problem, we saw the vector, and since that point, it really evolved to a very known problem in the market today.
So within that company, you're solving a big problem. You're understanding, the complexities that are non-trivial, and they're really not intuitive for somebody that's coming outside of this industry. What is it like first, transitioning back into a startup mode and taking a leadership position there, but being in that mindset is, again, after, being in Mobileye, being with Samsung, and, what type of, leadership style do you have to develop that may be differently from your previous experiences?
So I think that from challenging perspective, that's definitely one of the hardest challenges that I've done, like every vertical product today in the market. And it requires the ability to translate what you know into actual products. So in proteanTecs, basically what we want to do today is to allow those electronics, in simple words, to communicate with us during both the production and the usage in the field. And to tell us what hurts them and how they feel from like the deepest level of electronics before a failure possess like an elementary threat, I would say, to the safety of the driver. And if you want to simplify it, you can look at it as a digital sensor, as a camera, that if you rotate it, it has eyes into the electronics. And basically it produces data all the time from within the car to the cloud. And this data is super valuable, both to make manufacture better and both maintain the characteristic of those electronics in the field and create better trade-offs of those design, when you as a driver eventually needs to spend the time not fixing the car, driving a car that is 100% available and 100% safe in the field, and it needs to survive like that for 10 years in the road. So that point requires that combination between knowledge, what's going on in the market, where the market is going, and how the car industry is going to change and evolve. And it's like working together. It's an ecosystem that feeds each other and evolve together, I would say.
Now, I think that, you're looking at the market today, and if you ask most people what is the most challenging part of the ecosystem, you would say it's talent, right? It's finding the right talent. Now, I'm imagining, especially in a deep tech startup, as the one that you're leading here, it makes it even harder because the pool of people that you can potentially hire is also smaller. But I can only imagine also that part of the hiring process is the brand of the company, but also the mission behind the company and the ability to really engage with that mission. Is it hard to sort of sell on a company that is a little bit more complicated, I would say, in terms of its offering and in terms of the problem that it solves, because you require both an understanding of the automotive space, but also of the chip market and what's happening with autonomous vehicles as vehicles, become more and more advanced?
Yeah. So first of all, the answer is globally yes. I would say, not specifically looking at us as a startup, but globally talent acquisition is hard. We're producing less R&D talents today, but if I'm personally looking at proteanTecs basically evolved from the market of data center and communication. And it already served very important and very big customers, and the product was already silicon proven. So we'd be actually able to look at what they've done and see the success criteria already in day one. So it was from perspective of looking at it and putting talented around it, and also using talented person that worked with me in the past. It was, I think at that point, the vision was pretty straightforward to what it is that we're doing today. And most of the guys, especially in the automotive, are very experienced guys, and very talented. We have also a region in Germany to be located close to the OEMs. But it's definitely a challenge from headcount perspective, I would say. Yes.
What do you enjoy most about your work, about your day-to-day, about the industry?
So I think that the most enjoyable part. So if you look at it on the micro level, doing startups is always hard. But when you see the big picture, I think most of the fun that comes out of that is actually to see how it grows and how it grows with you, both as a team that work together and both from product perspective. And also, when I'm trying to look forward, I'm personally, as my hobby, I'm defining the act of driving as the communication between our sensors. Hearing, feeling, and it's like reflected very accurately through wheels and pedals to you, and that's what makes a great car. The ability to reflect things authentically around that box to you as a driver. But now when I'm looking at the new drivers, there is a new digital audience that just want to reach a destination in the most efficient way and the most accurate way, and they are right, and rightly so. But they are dependent on those machines, on their 100% availability, on the zero failures. And what I'm fascinating is actually to see how the car driving and lovers would fix cars in the future with a laptop instead of a torque wrench. And this is the macro looking at things. On the micro level, you are very busy. In execution, I would say we're very execution driven, and this is also my way of managing things.
I love it. I love it. So being a figure in the industry now, where you're thinking about the future and you're imagining the world where people are fixing their cars through the laptop, not with a wrench like you did as a kid. Where do you get that inspiration from on a daily basis? The inspiration to innovate, to be creative, to lead in this new, more futuristic state of mind?
So I think that there is a lot of influencer today in that market. Back then, in the early days, that we only started looking at that market, it was very tiny and small market. Today, it's a huge consumer, also for electronics. And it also accompanied with lots of people, lots of very interesting people that pushes boundaries with very good intention to make good. And I also look at that as the interesting part for me, to do things that actually makes good in the future and in our future. In my small domains called cars and autonomous driving, I would love to keep doing that, and I was very fascinated by that.
I love it. If you had to think of a few words that represent Gal Carmel, what words come to mind?
Very tough question. I think that the first one will be extremist in every aspect that I do. Second will be very analytical. And I think the third one will be personal and emotional to what I do. I'm taking things very light and very seriously all together. And I'm doing things with lots of emotion in it and lots of passion in it.
Gal, toda rabba. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for the great work that you're doing for the industry. I love the intersection of deep technology with consumer behavior. And throughout this conversation, you're not just talking about cars and chips and data, data science, but you're talking about at the end how the people are going to experience their drive, and they're going to experience their relationship with the car. And I love that. And your journey is so interesting and inspiring. So thank you for sharing the time with me, and stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Of course. Thank you.